Forget what the movies told you. You didn't die in a duel. You didn't fall in a blaze of glory with a six-shooter in your hand. You died slowly, quietly, somewhere between the hunger and the fever. The West didn't kill with bullets. It killed with routine. You woke up in a wooden shack with frost in your hair, even in spring. You hadn't eaten a real meal in days. Your stomach growled so often it became background noise. You coughed blood once and ignored it. No doctor was coming. There wasn't one within 100 miles. And even if there were, you couldn't afford him. The wind outside wasn't just cold. It was hostile. It scraped your skin, carried dust into your eyes, and whispered something that sounded like, "No one will find you." And it was right. Your neighbor hadn't spoken in a week. Your wife cried quietly when the last of the flour was gone. The baby hadn't moved all morning. You told yourself it was sleeping. It wasn't. People didn't scream when they died out here. They stopped moving. That was all. The West didn't need an outlaw to kill you. It just needed time. Time and silence and distance. And you would collapse into the land like a loose fence post, forgotten by the next season. And that gun you kept under your pillow? You were more likely to use it on yourself than in a gunfight. There were no supermarkets, no supply chains. If your crops failed, and they did often, you didn't eat. If winter came early, or summer came dry, or the locusts got there first, you were out of luck. And out of food. You rationed everything: flour, salt, hope. You stretched one loaf of bread for a week, fed your kids first, and chewed dry roots until your gums bled. The stew boiled down to bones, then water, then nothing. You told your children stories so they wouldn't notice you skipping your turn at dinner. Again, you hunted. But there were fewer animals now. The herds moved farther away. The bullets cost more than you could spare. And the government? Absent. No relief, no help, no cavalry. Just silence and taxes. When the hunger got bad, you stopped thinking clearly. You forgot words. You forgot birthdays. You forgot who you were before your body became a thing that only wanted to survive. Children died in their sleep. Mothers wasted away breastfeeding babies who never opened their eyes. Men went into the hills and didn't come back, not from bandits or beasts, but from shame. You were told the West was land and freedom, but no one told you that the soil was dry, the sky was cruel, and food didn't grow on patriotism. The gun? It stayed in the drawer. It wasn't hunger you used it against, but the part of yourself that still cared. Out here, you could scream and no one would hear you. You could vanish and no one would ask why. Because there was no one left to ask. Neighbors were miles away, roads barely existed. Letters stopped arriving. You forgot what another voice sounded like. You stopped talking to your wife. Not because you didn't love her, but because there was nothing new to say. Just hunger. Just dust. Just waiting. She cried when the stove broke. You didn't fix it, not because you couldn't, but because you stopped caring. Some men went mad, started mumbling to the wall, to the wind, built scarecrows just to have someone to talk to, danced in the fields naked, laughing, crying, no one there to see the difference. Others just stared at the horizon for hours, like they were waiting for God, or death, or a stagecoach that never came. Children invented imaginary friends, not out of imagination, but out of necessity. Even they knew the silence out here wasn't peace. It was starvation of the soul. And when the silence got too loud, some loaded the gun, not to fight bandits, not to protect the home, just to make a sound again. They called it promise, opportunity, God's country. But what you found was wind that peeled paint off the walls and dirt that refused to grow anything except regret. The ground was dry one season, flooded the next. Crops drowned in mud or cracked in dust. Rivers vanished overnight, or froze so hard they shattered axes. There were no forests, just plains that stretched forever and offered nothing back. You learned the weather didn't change, it attacked. Windstorms so thick with sand they flayed skin. Lightning that struck wagons and set them ablaze. Snow in May, drought in October. And always the sun, not warm, but watching, like a god that didn't blink. The West wasn't a place, it was a test, one designed to make you fail slowly. You lost animals to the cold, tools to rust, people to the horizon, because sometimes it was safer to walk away than keep watching everything rot in place. And the sky never answered, not to prayers, not to curses. It just kept turning, blue and empty, while you withered under it. The bullet didn't get you. The earth did, and it didn't even notice. When you died out here, it wasn't dramatic. There were no violins, no black veils, no priest with solemn words. You collapsed in a field, in your bed, in a dried-up well, and the wind kept blowing. Maybe someone found you. Maybe not. If you were lucky, they dug a shallow hole. If they had time, they threw a stone on top. If they cared, they said your name once before forgetting it. There were no coffins, no markers, no dates carved in stone. The land didn't have room for memory, only for bodies. Sometimes, the body was too far gone, picked apart by animals, buried in snow, lost in the hills, or burned by the sun until there was nothing left to mourn. And those who survived didn't grieve. They couldn't. Grief was a luxury for people with time, with food, with the hope of tomorrow. Out here, you didn't weep. You moved on. Or you were next. The towns grew. The railroads stretched. The myth of the West expanded. But the people who fed it? Buried in silence. Eaten by dust. Forgotten in their own century. The gunmen got songs. The cowboys got legends. But the settlers, the starving, the sick, the abandoned, they got erased. In the end, they told stories about gunfights, about fast hands and high noon, about lone riders with clean coats and sharper aim. They built legends out of noise and ignored the silence where most people actually died. No one sang songs about the woman who died giving birth in a freezing cabin. No one wrote books about the boy who starved beside a dry well. No one painted the man who walked into the hills one morning and never came back. Because those deaths weren't exciting. They weren't cinematic. They were real. And real was boring. Real was ugly. Real was what the West didn't want to remember. So they polished the myth. They gave it a revolver, a horse, and a one-liner. And they sold it to the next generation as history. But the real West was built by the broken, the desperate, the quiet. It was stitched together with fever and frostbite, and paid for in stomachs that never stopped aching. It was the grave before the duel, the cough before the draw, the famine before the shootout. The West didn't need bullets to kill. It had wind, and hunger, and silence, and time. And when it was done with you, it left you face down in the dirt, while the next fool chased glory in your place.